everyone. Welcome to the Take Your Health Back Now podcast. We are on season 3, episode 2 today.
Yes.
So, Kendra and Jenni here, obviously.
Hello.
So we have our new platform that we're coming off of that we used the last time we were talking about. Anyway, so this is the first time we're trying both of us remotely.
Yes.
So
we have a big snow day right now, so remote is pretty much the only way to do this today.
Right. So this is new for us. So anyway, so last time we were talking about stepping into the new year with focusing on positive instead of the narrative. So hopefully you did our challenge that we had at the end.
Yes.
So we were just talking about that, the 6 steps that we went over. And then hopefully you really got in your mind what your goal is.
Right. And if you haven't, then go back and listen to that first, season 3, episode 1 before you listen to this one, because they kind of go together. Because we're doing a little bit of a challenge series with these first few episodes this season. So do try to listen to these in order.
Right. And of course, with the one we did last time, we are always focusing on health. And then, as you get healthier, that does impact your entire life, right? But whatever your goal was that you came up with going through the first episode and your 6 steps might not be all about health. But
right.
Of course, our focus is. So the health comes down to what's going on around us. So if you take away the interference, your body has the amazing ability to heal.
Yes.
And then Jenni and I often talk about how the cause is the cure. So the cause, what is causing people's bodies to break down, if you address where you have control over those, then that's actually the cure, how you come back to health. So today we're talking about the external environment, where you don't really have control, but you need to have an understanding of what's happening to people.
Yes, basically. It is always important to have all of the knowledge that you can, so that you can kind of put, all the pieces in place, and then you need to focus on positive things, what you have control over, but you really do need to know all the things before you know where to focus.
Right. And a lot of people don't like to think about what's really going on. We're really being poisoned on all levels is why people are, people's bodies are breaking down. It's the overburden on your body. We talk about that a lot. But yeah, you really have to acknowledge it. And, something to think about too, if you get angry that they're doing this to us, that's okay, because that's righteous anger. That's actually coming from a good place. You need to express that. But you don't want to stay in that focus. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And really your environment. So all of these diseases that people are experiencing are environmental, really. We talk about diet, lifestyle, and environment, but really it comes down to the environment, your environment.
Yeah, they really intertwine all those 3 things.
Right.
But the environment is, I feel like, where most of the interference is that you can get rid of easily.
Right. It's the biggest general word that we can use. Yeah. So we broke it down into 3 parts. So we call it the external environment, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and that's where you really don't have control. And then your immediate environment, which is what we'll do in our next podcast. And your immediate environment is where you do have control. So that would be like your home, your office, your car, whatever, your space, where you can make choices that impact your life. And then your internal environment. So that is the external and the immediate environment cause dysfunction internally. Right. And then the internal environment actually causes more issues. So we're going to break it down into those 3 parts.
Yes. So again, watch these episodes in order.
Right. Will make much more sense.
Yes.
And if any of you have seen I guess it wasn't a podcast, it was just a video on when we spoke at the Health Freedom event in Chicago, Trinity Park. That's what we talked about, was the cause is the cure. And really, we're just going to talk about the same thing, but break it down. Okay, so your external environment should we list them off, or should we talk about them one at a time?
I think we should just list them real quick, and then we'll go back and talk about each one.
Okay. So I've got my list down on the floor. Unless you want to read it, would it be easier?
No, because my picture of it is hard to see while I'm doing this. So since you have a big
Okay.
paper,
All
I'll
right.
let you.
So let me move this. So we have 5G,
Right.
which actually just really turned on last week. Cell towers everywhere, and there are more and more cell towers popping up all the time. Chemtrails in the sky. If you don't know about chemtrails or believe in them, just go outside and look up, and you will become to be aware of them. The dimming of the sun project goes along with the chemtrails. Weather manipulation also goes along with the chemtrails. There's 350 plus chemicals in our food right now. I mean, this was 10 years ago, so who knows how many now. Synbiology, so synbio or synthetic biology is something relatively new and we don't hear about it, but that is huge right now with what they're doing to our food, our supplements, medications that people are taking. It's now in our personal care products, our cleaning products. So we'll go into more depth with that. Glyphosate, obviously, and other chemicals are spraying on our fields. Pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides, again, that they're spraying and then are getting into our water and not into our food. I've got this huge paper. Lawn chemicals, that's a big one. Even like today, we have the snow day, but I was thinking about that this morning. Salt, the salt they're putting on the roads. People are using, on their sidewalks, that type of thing. You don't think about. Flame retardants are everywhere in clothing, especially children's clothing, children's pajamas, your couches, all kinds of furnishings, mattresses, that type of thing. Sanitizers, again, with the narrative, that's really huge right now. Hand sanitizers, sanitizing everything. I already talked about synthetic biology. Nanotechnology, so that's when the particles are so teeny tiny that they your cell membranes don't even keep them out. They just pass right through. They pass right through your blood-brain barrier. That's in all products and food. Biosludge.
Yummy.
Which is gross, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Smart meters everywhere. And now, just maybe in the last year, you can't even have your smart meters removed. So that's a problem. People that are vaccinated. All wireless devices. So there's more and more and more wireless devices. I'm sure, we're just into February now. So I'm sure for Christmas, people got all kinds of new toys and wireless devices, smart electronics, even your smart appliances, your refrigerator can talk to your TV, all of those things. 85,000 synthetic chemicals. And again, that was 10, 15 years ago. And they've never updated that, so who knows now?
They don't want to spend money to scare people away from buying products, so they're not going to redo those.
Exactly. And those are just individual chemicals. That's not a, combination of chemicals or anything like that. The satellites that are up right now, I think and we're talking about the satellites that are beaming down the Wi-Fi signal. Not, there's lots of other satellites too, but I think there's 70,000 right now at this point, supposedly. I mean, who knows? But that's all I had written down.
Right. So I think there's a couple of big categories that we can go through and then talk about each one. So electronics is a big category, and that includes a lot of things. So we've, over the last 20, 30 years, we've really exponentially increased our exposure to all electronics. So everything has a magnetic field or gives off a frequency. I mean, even people have electricity. But we're being exposed to so much in so many different frequencies, and different frequencies affect us differently, that it's important to understand each piece of that one.
Right. And frequencies, like Jenni said, where everything is energy and everything gets off a frequency. I'm sure we've talked about this before, but the natural frequencies that we're supposed to be connected to, or that our bodies recognize, are being bombarded by these frequencies that are not natural to us, and your body doesn't recognize, and they become a negative impact on us.
Right.
So yeah, the load is so enormous right now, because you not only do you have every single device in your own house, that adds up, but you have all of these devices outside of you. You have the cell towers, you have,
The
you
satellites.
know, if you look at your phone to see, uh, networks, you know, you look and everybody around you, your home is affected by everybody's cell network, whatever
Right.
it's called. So there's just so much. So our bodies are just, anytime there's anything that our bodies do not recognize, what we recognize is nature, because we are nature. And you know, since the beginning of time, that's what our body exists with. And so everything that is man-made and not natural, our body does not recognize, and then becomes reactive to it.
Right.
And that's really where autoimmune comes into play.
Right. So your body has to work a lot harder to kind of interpret things that aren't natural, and then it has to detox or, you know, put up whatever defenses it needs to keep you healthy around those things. So think about all of that energy and work that your body's putting out there because of all of these signals that it's dealing with. So the ones that you don't have control over, the satellites, the cell towers, you know, other people's networks that are being put out, you just need to know how much of that there is going on. That way you can really commit to making the changes in your own personal space, which will be next episode. Because a lot of people don't want to. They like the convenience, they like the technology, they like what this does for them. So they're like, oh, it's only a little bit, I'm only using one thing. So you really have to understand these big external exposures that are going on that are just growing and growing and growing. I mean,
Right.
if there are big government bodies saying that they don't want 5G turned on because it interferes with their things, then just imagine what it's doing to a regular person.
Right. Because this 5G rollout, I mean, we heard about 5G. We've heard about 5G rolling out now for several years,
Yeah.
right? And it actually rolled out 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning of the pandemic, which that's a whole another topic of, a lot of people think that those two things were related. But just recently, last Wednesday, they really rolled it out, but also changed the frequency. So it's a lower frequency, which is actually worse for us.
Yeah,
So
the initial
just keep
rollout
that in mind.
was not truly 5G. They were just labeling it that, so it wasn't the frequency. It's really just been turned on to that frequency. But,
Okay.
you know, as they build things, they want people to buy in. So it's kind of like when they did 4G LTE, and, you know, like they had the things in place, but they didn't really turn it on until recently.
Right. But now it really is on.
Yes.
Which is a huge issue. So the chemtrails that lots of people like to pretend don't exist, they really do exist. They've been going on actually since the 70s.
Yeah.
But it does change. Like when I really became aware of it, it was in 2015. So now, ever since I've been obsessed with it. But as you watch over the years, you can tell they're changing. Right. Changing things up, changing the way they work, changing the way they move, whatever they're spraying. So
and
because
this to do with the weather manipulation too. So
right.
These are kind of all big topic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And right, that we could do a whole really long podcast just on that. But the main point for this is you need to be aware, because they are spraying heavy metals. I mean, it's been proven. It's a government project that's hush hush. So it's not like you can go somewhere and see exactly what they're spraying. But a lot of people have done, air samples, soil samples, that type of thing. So they have a good idea of what they're spraying. But aluminum, strontium, lithium, a lot of heavy metals, very high. And this whole thing ties in with the 5G. These work hand in hand. That's the idea, to build this grid, this AI grid, which is the big goal. But they're also spraying viruses. They're spraying little smart nanobots, again, to help us hook up. There's just all these things that they're spraying.
Yeah.
So again, we are really, truly being poisoned. But as long as you do all the things where you have control and lighten your body burden, your body's going to be able to at least deal with these.
Right. Right. And this is like the external that you don't have control over. I think this, when we talk about our immediate environment, this ties into air quality. That's a big piece of this. And then just your exposures to heavy metals and toxins and detoxing, those kind of things. So that's where that ties in. But just understand that the air is really not that clean. There are lots of things being put into it that aren't just pollution. They're there on purpose. And I mean, you can order the weather for your wedding. I think we've mentioned this before. Right. Like, you can have someone go up and spray so that your wedding day outside is lovely weather. So if you don't believe that any of this can happen, it's too sci-fi, just look at that. I mean, and that's just a regular business that's not government funded. So
and there are a lot of businesses doing this, and it's not just the spray. It goes hand in hand with these huge ionospheric heaters, and they go by other names, where they're actually moving the radiation or the EMFs or whatever you want to call it, that actually moves whatever they're spraying, and that's what changes the weather patterns. So that's kind of a twofold there. The synbiology stuff is really new, and I keep researching it. But it's very hard to find because, well, I think they're obviously probably not wanting to publicize it. You really have to dig deep to find it. But also, it's what Jenni and I have talked about before, where they take the computer, well, Jenni always describes it better, but where they take the computer program or the wording, and well, you describe it. You're better at that than me, since I'm not the computer person.
Right. So basically, this goes into GMOs is a easier way for people to kind of step into understanding what this is, and I think part of the reason you can't find a lot of it is also the business side of it. So I think they're going to end up making these like trade secrets, so you can't know what's in it.
Well, the thing is, they can call it natural, because they take this protein sequence. It's exactly the same as maybe a plant, and there are 75 plants. I saw Sarah G yesterday posted on Green Med Info, and he's super knowledgeable. His website is an amazing resource, but even he obviously doesn't know about it, because he said there are 70. Did you know that there are 75 plants that are used in medications? But they're really not. They know the healing quality of these plants, but then they take the protein sequence and replicate it.
Build it. Yeah. Think of like a 3D printer. I think everyone has a good idea of that. So basically, the computer can scan something, it finds its protein structure, and then it replicates that and then puts it out. So you have an output that is a copy of the natural thing, but it's not naturally made. So it's artificially made, but it's almost like a clone, like it is just the same as far as you looking at it. But because it's not made out of natural things, then it's, who knows what it's going to do internally. But it can be labeled as natural because it is essentially the same. And
because if you would read the genome sequence, that sequence is the same. But because it is the same, they don't have to label it, like kind of like what Jenni was saying. So with GMOs, they have to label them. This you don't have to, because they say it's natural, and legally they're not supposed to go into organic anything, but a lot of organic companies do not know about this, and because they say it's a natural source, they're using it. So it is kind of infiltrating into organic products, organic foods, that way, because people just don't know.
Right.
And that's how they're getting away with it.
So think about, I guess, things like pine and lemon. Um, we've always used those, as people, not the big we, to clean and disinfect because we know that that works. Just we've seen it kill things. If you clean with this, people get sick less. Even before people knew why people got sick, they used those things. But now we have products that are chemicals that are scented because it makes us think, oh, lemon, that's fresh, that's clean, but it's not actually using lemon. It's using a chemical compound that smells like lemon. So this is like the next step on that. They're actually taking the gene structure, creating it, and putting it into things. So
right, and the way they make it is they take this code, this computer code, and then they take bacteria and sugar, and then in a petri dish, put in the code into the bacteria, and they found out as long as they put in that genome code, put it in, the bacteria will grow whatever they want, and that's how they're doing it. So it's like a Frankenstein science experiment. I mean, it really is.
Yes.
And there is no testing. This is the test. So there's no testing on what it does to our health, to the environment's health. I mean, this getting out into the environment now, I can't even imagine. So this is fairly new, but it's more and more and more. I mean, this is the big, if you look at, my mom even was talking about this the other day. She was talking about stocks. She's into that type of thing. And the stocks for those companies, those synbio companies, the biotech companies, are just like through the roof because the funding and whatever.
Well, and it's so much cheaper. So their profit margin is huge. If you can synthetically create from bacteria something that is expensive to grow and process, then you are definitely a step ahead on the profit margin.
Right. Like reversatol, for example, that normally comes from grapes. So that's why, like red wine or green or purple grapes, it's a really important compound, and they like to use it in supplements. Well, if you had to go, I mean, think how many grapes you would have to grow, harvest, squish, the whole process just to extract that reversatol. Well, now they can grow it this synbio way, so much cheaper, like Jenni said, and then you could have as much as you want. And always remember, and I know we've mentioned this before, but natural, like a grape, you can't patent it. You can't make money off of that, except for the fact that the farmers are growing it and selling them. When you have this new synbio compound, you can patent that. You can make money off of it that way too, and that's a big part of this as well. And this whole climate change issue that we're going to hear more and more about, their spin on it is that, and that's going to go with food and meat, and it's going to really go pretty deep, talking about climate change and doing the right thing. And they say these are plant-based, natural-based, new products, but people don't know. A lot of this is in vegan foods right now, gluten-free foods. So people feel like they're doing the right thing by, going more vegetarian, that type of thing, but they're eating more and more of this synbio, and have no idea because it doesn't have to be labeled.
Yes, scary, bad stuff.
Yes. So we will do a whole podcast on that, and I have pages of notes on I'm trying to find lists of all of the food additives they have now, and additives are making their way in cleaning supplies and that type of thing, but it is hard to find, but I do have a growing list. So glyphosate is a big one, obviously. That they, there are many other pesticides, that type of thing, but glyphosate is the big one that we know of. Millions of pounds of glyphosate are sprayed every year on the crops, and every year it's more and more and more and more. The thing with glyphosate is that it just, they like to say it's okay for humans. It's okay for human health. It just disrupts the plant synthetic, or I'm still on the synbio in my head. So what happens is it disrupts the plant's shikimate pathway. So that's the metabolic pathway of the plant. But the problem is it also disrupts the bacteria's pathway, which is, we are made up more bacteria than we are even cells in our body. So that's how it affects humans health, but they don't tell you that. Right. So anyway,
why would they want to go into detail and do studies on that to prove that their product is awful?
Right.
That's bad business. So, most people think of glyphosate as something that's just being used while the crops are growing, like to keep, pesticide, herbicide, that kind of thing. But it's actually used at like every single step of the process. They're using it to dry out the harvest. They're using it during processing. It's not just while it's being grown. So it is the most, I don't know, we see it used the most out of all of these things. I feel like because people are starting to understand how bad it is for our overall gut health, it's probably going to diminish and something else will come up. So this is one of those things kind of like BPA where it's really bad. So they took it out and they replaced it with something that's like one little tiny protein different. So it's clearly going to affect us very similarly. So we need to, glyphosate's a big one. You need to understand how it's being used and why it's bad. But really, it's almost all pesticides, herbicides, those kind of things have a bad influence. This is why your food sourcing is so important.
Yes. Yeah, and what Jenni was talking about too is they spray it. It's called desiccating the crops. So they spray it on the crops. They use it on wheat, but there's many other crops they use it on. Yeah, like flaxseed and sunflower seeds. I mean, there's so many different crops now they're using it on, and the list keeps growing. And that's the thing, you can't even keep up because every time you think then you go back and look, and they've added 4 more that they're using it on. Right. But the desiccating of the crops, what happens is, like wheat, you grow a wheat field and then you would normally have to let it dry out for a month or whatever until it completely died and dried out. Then you can go in and harvest it. Well, if they spray the glyphosate on it, within it like a day or two, it's completely dried out. It just instantly kills it. And then they can harvest it. So and then they can get a bigger turnaround, Again, it comes down to money, that type of thing. So, and of course they're spraying it. So people that live near farms, again, it's adding to that pollution in our air.
Yeah.
And glyphosate is in Roundup, which people use for lawn chemicals, which I have here.
Yes. And I feel like that one, that's like, because it's been in the news a lot recently, that's what people think about glyphosate. So it's important for them to know all the other things. So the reason why Roundup is getting taken off the shelves or they're getting sued is because, you or I could go use it. We have exposure. Then we see these long-term health consequences. But if they're spraying it on wheat to dry it out, and then you're eating a loaf of bread from your grocery store, you're not going to connect that. So they're not in any danger of being sued when they're using it that way. So that's why it's going to keep increasing. I think we'll see more of it on that end of things and less of it in consumer products.
Right. And interestingly enough, and I'm pretty sure we've said this before too, but so they were sued and won. But the funny thing was that they said, okay, we'll take it off the shelves, the lawn care Roundup, within 2 years. But the farmers, they're not going to take it, even though they lost their lawsuit, they had to pay out billions of dollars.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. But the farmers don't have to quit using it for like 15 years or 20 years or something.
I think it's like 7 years for the farm products that they'll stop making it. And then people who have it can continue to use it even though it's not being produced anymore for like another 7 years after that. So it ends up being used for like 14 years or something like that. So it's definitely still around, and that gives them time to create another product that's almost the same that they can use in place of it.
Right. And the other thing to keep in mind is this all goes back to the symbiology. So when I was researching it, I saw that a lot where they were talking about, all of these chemicals are prevalent in our environment now and causing harm to the environment and to human health. So we need to step back from chemical use, and this is how we're going to save the world, is the synbio stuff. So
and that
they won't
sounds
have
great.
to use crops that grow with, that they use Roundup on, because now they have all of this synbio stuff, which is equally as bad, but just in a different way.
Which is
And
exactly
yeah, that's true. They won't
how,
have to use the chemicals.
right, and that's exactly how Monsanto's GMO seeds started. They said, well, we're
Right.
not going to be able to grow enough food for everyone, so we need to modify these seeds so they grow different. Now it's great. We've got a solution. So then they gave them to people, and now you can't even grow those without their chemicals. So now everyone's stuck in this
Right.
system where they have to grow these GMO crops and they have to use these chemicals because otherwise they won't grow. So more bad than good came of that, and this is going to happen the same way.
Right. And interestingly enough, Monsanto also, I don't remember what year, how many years ago it was, they came out with aluminum resistant seeds. Well, why do you think they came out with aluminum resistant seeds? Because of all of the aluminum in the chemtrails. So all of these, this all ties together when you really start looking at it. So flame retardants, that's huge. And the thing with flame retardants, they're one of the persistent chemicals that they never break down. Once you have them in the environment, they're there forever. And they have found, I don't remember what year it was. Again, it was probably 10 or 15 years ago, but they took, remember this? They took flesh samples or fatty samples of whales in the Antarctica. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that's where there's no industry, nobody lives, the water there should be pristine in these whales. But they had, I don't remember how many industrial chemicals they had, but every single one of them, 100% of them had flame retardant built up in their bodies. So that just shows you it's everywhere. And it's in,
it's the same kind of thing. It was where they were saying, oh my gosh, there's a fire in a house and little kids are going to get killed. Like, that's awful. So what can we do?
Probably because it happened one time.
Right. Let's put this chemical on everything in the house. That way it can't catch on fire.
Right.
And now there's a huge business. There's all these chemicals. They're making all this money. And if you talk to actual firefighters, they are very against it. Anything that has flame retardant in it is worse in a fire because of all of the chemicals and off-gassing and the way it smokes and smolders. It's actually better to use fire safety, tight-fitting clothing, natural things like wool, much better. But now it's become a law that it has to be in these things. Laws get passed because people push them because they make money. So same cycle. Right.
Yeah. Okay, so the sanitizers, again, they're everywhere right now. People see people doing hand sanitizers and they're sanitizing everything. I don't even know if they're doing it as much now, but early on in this whole pandemic,
it got spraying. Crazy.
It got crazy, like spraying the whole bus every time kids got off. Or I know my nephew worked in one of the cell phone companies, but they had some kind of mister. So every time the door opened to the retail business, this mist would come down. So it was sanitizing everybody.
And then the persistent ones that they developed and have been selling too, where it's like, spray this on a door handle and it'll be sanitized for 30 days.
Right. I mean, think about that. A lot of this, again, just take one drop of this information and then step back and just really think about it for a second. Use your common sense.
Think about something other than the messaging that you're being given or shoved down your throat, that we have to have this. It's a great thing because, people don't clean regularly. So if we can just put this on the door handle, then people are safer. No, it's causing something even worse than what it's trying to fix or keep safe, and someone is making a bunch of money off of a new product.
Right. And again, we are made up of more bacteria than cells in our body. We need bacteria to live. Bacteria in balance, if it's in balance, is a huge part of who we are. That's just our bodies. there's bacteria everywhere, and fungus and all of these things are just part of this huge ecosystem we live in, and it all goes together. And if there's these sanitizers all the time killing these off, it's killing all life. So anything that's a herbicide, insecticide, a pesticide, side means kill, sanitizers, they are designed to kill life. So they're killing everything,
Right.
including you. It's
Right.
just at a very small amount. It's an acute amount. So it's slowly, and that's why people are getting sick. But again, you can see all these things are coming in. It's not just one thing. It's so many on top of each other. Sorry.
And if you think about the sanitizers, you always read like that 99.9%. Like it's not killing all of the things. It's killing most of them. And the good, happy, friendly bacteria or germs, whatever, that it kills off easily are the ones we really need. So the really bad, strong, dangerous ones, those are being left behind. So it's killing everything but the worst stuff. So we're getting rid of all the good guys that might help us, and we're keeping all the bad guys that are bad for us. And then we're wondering why people are consistently being, seeing these big, strong infections and getting sicker and sicker, and all these superbugs. Like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? Well, we're giving them a perfect environment to grow.
Yeah, and that's where the out of balance comes into play. And even in our soil, everything we're spraying on our soil, that it's killing so many of the good microbes that we need. And I thought of something else I was going to say while you were talking. I didn't interrupt you. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I don't know what it was. Okay, so we did talk about biology, but again, remember, it's not just our food. I think we mostly talked about food, but it's also in personal care products, it's in cleaning products. And again, you don't know where it is. It does not have to be labeled. Also, they're combining the synthetic chemicals, that are made from petroleum with the synbiology too. So then you've got that combination that there's no testing on as well. So fragrance, just the word fragrance, perfume, we've talked about that before. It can have up to 500 different synthetic chemicals as the synbiology ingredients in there now too. So just keep that in mind. Nanotechnology is everywhere. Again, it's personal care products, it's cleaning products, it's in our food, it's in the vaccine, it's in, it's just everywhere. And it's these teeny tiny particles that there's no way to keep it out of your body. Like your blood-brain barrier is there to protect your brain. Your cell membrane is there to protect your cells, but it's so small it can just cross right through.
Yes. So you have no natural way to protect yourself or gather these things up to detox them. They just go wherever they want.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I knew I'd think of it. What I was going to say, back to the sanitizers, is, if you think about, like, our bodies have this, all our body wants to do is keep you alive. So it's constantly working to keep you alive, right? But that's how all life is. It's not just people.
Right.
And we have to keep, stop thinking of ourselves as separate from the rest of nature, because it's not true. But, these bacteria, like Jenni was saying, with the bad bacteria growing, that's how you get these superbugs and things, because they want to keep themselves alive. So if they are constant, and same with antibiotics, I think a lot of people understand about antibiotic resistance now. It's the same thing. Antibiotics are a pesticide, right? I mean, a pesticide. Yeah. Actually, glyphosate was originally a pesticide. That's its classification.
Right.
It is a pesticide. But anything that's a pesticide, which a sanitizer would be, those bacteria, they're not going to just go, oh, you're trying to kill me? Okay.
Right.
No, they're going to fight with everything they have to stay alive. So that's how you get these superbugs and these resistant bacteria. That's usually the bad ones, and then that's how leaky gut starts and all of those type of things. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yes.
Come back to that. So biosludge. Biosludge is something that they spray on the fields with conventional crops. But they actually are taking sewer waste
Mhm.
because, if you think about, there's so much of it. Where does it go? I mean, there has to be somewhere to put things, right? So they've decided, in their infinite wisdom, that they could take the sewer waste and spread it on the crops for fertilizer.
Yeah.
And they do that. But if you have sewer waste, you have all of those, the bad bacteria during time out. There's pharmaceuticals that have passed right through. There's just all kinds of, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of in-depth details to figure out why that's a bad idea.
Right. And they say that, it's filtered or it's sanitized, but there's so many things that we don't have the ability to neutralize,
Right.
that just it's not a good idea. Even like animal manure compost things now are just so filled with the same kind of things. Like we're getting to the point where there is very little clean, healthy sourcing. So you
Right.
really have to stick with clean, healthy sourcing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that it's as close to clean, healthy as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, this overburden on the body that we keep talking about, again, it's not just humans, it is all life. So
Right.
this overburden is, all animals, all life, all the way down to the bacteria, plus our soil, plus our just everything.
Yeah.
It's just overburden. Smart meters, we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Again,
that kind of fits in with that first topic with the
right.
electronics and the networking. And that really, you had said that in the last year you can't take them off. That it depends on your state too. So that was an Illinois state law.
Oh, so in Illinois you cannot take them off anymore.
Because,
you used to be able to request that you did not want them on your house,
but
now you cannot.
Electric companies or the utility companies got tired of getting in trouble because this person has it, that person doesn't. Plus, it was a lot of work for them to know this has it, that doesn't. So they lobbied to make it a regulation now, so that they don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, but you think about, you've got your gas meter, you've got your electric meter. I know here where we live, our water meter is not smart meter yet, but that's just because they haven't changed it out. It's expensive to make those changes. But that one smart meter is so, the load on our bodies. I mean, people get very, very sick from smart meters, and that's just one. And then when you've got two or three, it's constantly pulsing in and out, in and out, and out, because they can read in, but they can also read out.
Right.
So,
and it's not like it's on a schedule. So you think, oh, but they only drive by and scan it once a month. Well, they don't have it set up that the drive by is going to happen at this exact time on this exact day. So it has to be on all the time so that when they happen to do it, it's available.
Right. And again, you have the load not just from the ones on your house, but the people around you too.
Right.
It's a lot. Sorry, I'm trying to read my list.
I think we covered most of it. I know we're running kind of long this time, so.
Are we?
Yes.
That's because we could just keep talking.
I know.
Satellites is a big one to know, though, because I think a lot of people don't know that. They're putting up, like Elon Musk has this huge network of satellites he's putting up, but Amazon's got some. I think Facebook even has some. There's a lot of them. More companies getting on the bandwagon, and they're putting these up, and it's kind of like the smart meter. They're constantly beaming.
And these
Wi-Fi.
I mean, I think we're moving towards more virtual everything. Right. So this is why those are going up. So like Facebook has its new metaverse where you can just virtually be in an environment with people. They need to be able to have that signal and everyone access it. That's what they're doing. The Elon Musk, he's pushing internet connectivity. So we gave we gave like AT&T and Verizon, all the big phone companies. I think it was like $4 billion a couple years ago. The government gave it to them so that they could put fiber lines. They could bury fiber lines out to places that didn't have internet so that we could have it like a utility. Really, kids with online school need access. So these are fiber lines, much healthier for people because it's light, it's buried. But they never did it. Like they took the money and they didn't do it. That's a whole other thing. So now it's things like this where we're getting the satellites, we're using a wireless signal for that connectivity, and it's a much worse way to go. But
Right.
they're pushing it as, equality and connectivity, and we need it. But there are other better ways to do it.
Right. And again, it comes back to the Internet of Things and their whole
Yeah.
idea that they want everything connected. So it again, chemtrails, this frequency, and remember heavy metals. That's how you conduct energy, right? So, if we're full of heavy metals, everything is full of heavy metals. The air is full of heavy metals. Then this EMF frequency that they're beaming down, it's constantly this. It's like an EMF grid
It's
all around
almost
the
like
earth.
at some point you won't even need a device to connect because it'll be you.
Right.
Almost.
I mean, it's not almost. That's what they're doing. Which is a whole nother topic, but we're trying not to focus on those topics now. You can find that information yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the dimming of the sun project, we didn't really mention it, but that's part of the whole chemtrail thing.
Yeah,
But
weather
if
manipulation.
if you have an actual day off and you can go outside and pay attention to the sky periodically throughout the day, if you watch when you get up in the morning, they're spraying right in front of the sun. And as the sun moves across the sky, this spray that they're spraying moves all the way across.
Yeah.
So nobody, again, really knows. I mean, they're saying because of climate change, but
right.
If you think about it, we get our vitamin D from the sun mostly. And, that's a big part of immunity, keeping your immune system healthy.
Also, our natural sleep cycles, which are very important for health.
Right.
That's going to be gone because that's how your body knows, those triggers, the heat, the light, the sun. So your circadian rhythms are going to be screwed up.
Right. And again, it's not just humans, it's all life. All life depends on the sun. The sun is our life force energy, right?
Yeah.
So, again, the whole idea of this, we're done with this topic, but the whole idea is to lighten your body burden, lighten your body load so that you can deal with this stuff because we don't have any control with this. Right.
So, what was our challenge for this episode?
Right. So, our challenge for this is, first of all, we talked about this a lot, but in case you haven't heard before, so knowledge is not power. Knowledge plus applied action is power. That's where you become empowered, you become successful, right? So if you focus on this is super scary. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
It's out of our control. They're poisonous on all levels. That should be super scary, but you can't keep your focus on that.
Right.
Know it, because that's the knowledge. You can get angry at it. That's okay. But don't focus on that because that's where you're disempowered and you're in that victim mode. Right. So our next podcast will be where you can put your focus, where you really do have control, and that's where you become empowered. So just know this stuff because you need to know what's happening and why our bodies are breaking down and why you really have to work hard to do all the things we teach you, right?
And the more people that know about it, then we can make big systemic change at some level. But big systemic change comes when people have made small personal change first.
Great thing about the pandemic, I really think it's such a huge opportunity for this, the shift we're going through, is that it took that to wake people up to kind of what's going on. And that's where they're, but as they're focusing on this and learning about the corruption behind the scenes and, these people that whatever, is pushing this agenda, they're running into all of these other, big pharma and big ag and all of those things. So I think, that's going to change that narrative, but then people will be empowered and they'll know, and then it will filter down. So this stuff will end up going away, but it's going to be probably years in the making because it's huge. So in the meantime, you do the most you can for yourself to keep yourself as healthy as possible while we're waiting for all of this to crumble and fall. And it really will. And it is. But we're just at that where it's just the dominoes are just falling. So, yes. So that is your challenge. Acknowledge this, but make sure that you then, set your boundaries with it and get ready to focus on where you do have control.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. That sounds like an easy challenge for this.
Yes.
This episode.
Okay. Bye. Bye, Jenni.
All right. Bye.
Bye.